There is a very subtle numbness, because if we are going to avoid feeling the depth of our pain as humans, it means that we also avoid feeling the highs of our joy.
You are listening to Personal Development Mastery, the podcast that empowers you with the simple and consistent actions to take that will help you create a life of purpose and fulfillment. Before we dive in, if you enjoy listening and appreciate what we're doing, the quick favor I'm asking of you is to click the subscribe button. Now let's get started. Today it is my pleasure to speak with Michael Peterson. Michael, you are an approach coach, transformational guide, and ceremonialist. Your unique blend of traditional coaching and ceremonial frameworks transforms lives by helping people shed outdated patterns and discover their true potential. With experience from the jungles of Peru to shamanic practices, you offer profound yet gentle methods for personal evolution, and you are passionate about guiding people on their path of self-discovery. Michael, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thanks for having me on, Aggie. I appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to discussing with you some. I will give a glimpse of what some things that I have, prepared. I have the feeling that we might not go necessarily there, but one of the things was the power of plant medicine, which is. It's something I haven't spoken in the podcast for a while, actually. It's been a couple of years. But there was some other thing that caught my attention, and it was about setting your personal compass. And I find that concept very intriguing, especially the compass bit, compared to other ways that you can describe similar concepts. So, let's say these are a couple of things that I would like to speak about today. Before we go there, I would like a little bit, a very brief overview of, you have a very different background to what you're doing now. So if you can share a little bit about that transition and, so we can get a little bit of understanding of who Michael is. Or where he's coming from, actually. That's probably...
So you point this out, I had a very traditional Western upbringing, which was go to school, get a job, go back to school. And that's what I did. So, and the only kind of curveball in there is that when I was 14, my father committed suicide. And it kicked off this question for me of what is the meaning of life? There was no guide that I had except for trying to make a ghost happy. And I ended up getting my MBA and a Master's of Science in Public Policy Management. And I was looking at how business could be used to create social change, how policy impacted business, and that interrelated nature of the governmental and the financial business side of the current reality that we live in. Mm-hmm. And when I graduated, I was looking around and I realized that there was not a single job that was going to make me happy, no matter how much money it paid. And I needed to spend some time taking care of myself. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up going to Guatemala to begin with. And I did a yoga teacher training and studied natural building and permaculture, and also started working with plant medicine down there. And that transition was challenging in some ways, but very natural. And I had a plan at that point in time to go to Peru to join an organization called the Peace Corps, which is a U.S. governmental organization that does volunteer work in developing countries. And I was serving in Peru. And as soon as I got to Peru, I had already had a couple of dietas under my belt and a decent amount of ceremonies for a beginner. And I kept on thinking, when can I go to the jungle and lie to my organization about what I'm doing and go work with plant medicine? And I said, that's probably not the right way to go about it. And at the same time, the program changed and we weren't doing what I thought I had gone down there to do in terms of small business consulting. My mayor thought that I was a spy for the CIA. And my social development manager came into the office drunk and tore up my visa documents. And so it wasn't a comfortable transition to say, I need to let go of this story. But at the same time, there weren't that many options available. And so I quit. I went back home. My mom said, great, Michael, you have 2 master's degrees from a top 15 school in the US. What are you going to go do? Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm going to move back down to Peru. I'm going to go to the jungle and I'm going to study plant medicine full time. And that kicked off a journey that is still unfolding.
Let's go straight into it because you mentioned plant medicine, so it makes sense to remain there. So my question is, first of all, what drew you to that in the first place? Why? What was your personal calling to that? Let's start with that. Tell me what was that drew you with plant medicine? And just to clarify also, Michael, for someone listening and might not be certain of what you mean by plant medicine, give a brief also explanation.
So when I am talking about plant medicine, I am not just talking about psychedelic plant medicine. I'm talking about working with plants as spirit allies. And so working with them in a spiritual, ceremonial, intentional way. Within that, for the sake of healing and connection to the divine. And within that, there's the category of psychedelic plant medicines, mm-hmm. which would include things like ayahuasca, psilocybin. Mm-hmm. You could include LSD. It's synthesized, but it is synthesized from a fungus. So it's kind of on the edge there. Things like iboga, and even cannabis. Mm-hmm. And when my dad died, I had a kind of very strong reaction for a while against substances. Okay. And so I didn't touch anything. And at the same time, I had high school teachers who thought that I was smoking pot all the time. And so by the time that I did eventually smoke cannabis, it was a very interesting experience for me because cannabis works on a horizontal axis, if you will. And so if you imagine every piece of stress that you have as the center of a graph, cannabis helps you get to the side of that tension so that you can see what's going on and gain a different perspective of it. Mm-hmm. And that has a purpose, but eventually you have to deal with that ball of tension in the middle. And it's useful to get the different perspectives, but cannabis keeps you on the outside if it's not used in a ceremonial context, which I definitely was not doing. And the more I used it, the farther and farther removed from myself I got. And through that experimentation, though, I was also trying mushrooms, trying acid in a mix of concert settings, festival settings, but also in terms of personal use and exploration.
Mhm.
And through those experiences, I had a somatic understanding of something that I could not explain.
Okay.
And when I was graduating from my master's program, I knew that there was something deeper there for me to explore. And I also knew that I really needed some healing. I had spent, the last 16, 14, 16 years of my life, something like that, trying to make the ghost of my dad happy, trying to live up to other people's expectations of what I should be doing. And my body was tired of it.
Mm.
And so when I went to sit with plant medicine, I couldn't say with specific detail all of the things that I knew I wanted to work on. But I knew that I was in a place that I didn't like within myself. I needed some help navigating through that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a call from ayahuasca that just said, hey, it's time. And I found the right facilitators for me who had a lineage that's a mestizo lineage. So a mixture of the Spanish and indigenous cultures
Mm-hmm.
that is also a syncretic lineage and brings in Buddhism, Kashmiri Shaivism, and has one of these kind of multifaceted points of view that is still rooted in a traditional
Mm-hmm.
lens, but isn't contained only by that.
There is one question it came to my mind when you were talking about cannabis. You used the phrase that the more you did it, you said something that it removed you from yourself, or if you were more removed from yourself. So I wanted to ask, how do you mean that? What? Just a brief comment, and then I have
Sure,
another.
sure, sure. Well, I guess what I mean is that instead of just getting a perspective on the stress and
Yes.
the pain that I was feeling, and then going back into that pain and stress with a new perspective,
Mm-hmm.
I continued to stay away and try
Okay.
to numb out that feeling
Mm-hmm.
in some way, shape, or form. And I was very functional to some degree while I did that. It wasn't like I was on the side of the road or homeless throughout that process. It's pot, but there is a very subtle numbness, because if we are going to avoid feeling the depth of our pain as humans, it means that we also avoid feeling the highs of our joy. And so we can't avoid any aspect of ourselves forever. And we can't cut off an aspect of ourselves without blocking access to a corresponding part of ourselves that we might really enjoy. So that's what I mean when I say that I distanced myself from myself. I disengaged.
If you enjoy this episode, can you think of one person that would find it useful and share it with them? I'd really appreciate it. It helps the show grow, and you will also be adding value to people you care about. Thank you. And now let's get back to the episode. Thank you very much for this answer. Yeah, that was everything I hoped to hear and more. So I appreciate it. Let me bring this then to a more practical, because so far we have discussed quite, let's say, on a theoretical level. But I understand that you integrate in your practice, you integrate those shamanic and ceremonial techniques. Some of them you mentioned, I bet there are many more. But you integrate that with traditional coaching. So I wanted to ask, how do you do that? Give us an overview of how that works.
Yeah. So what I have found after studying plant medicine for 5 years, however many dietas I've done at this point, and is that not everybody is trying to come in and study shamanism to serve the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Most people aren't.
Okay.
And so there's integration as a whole, which is how do you bring those big experiences into your life? And then I found that there was also a set of people where plant medicine just wasn't the right fit for them, whether it was for health issues or personal choices. But the shamanic realm was still open. And what coaching is very good at is helping people explore themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we think about therapy as looking backwards in life and saying, what happened? How did it happen? How does this impact you? I'm less curious about that, admittedly. It's not that I think it's not important, but as a coach, I'm much more curious about where are you right now and where do you want to be? And so my first question to everybody who I work with is, how do you want to be? And people struggle with that. I get a lot of, here's what I want to do. And I get a lot of surface level, how do I want to be? But what I'm talking about is, how do you want to interact with the world? What is the quality of the relationship that you want to have with the mystery?
Mm-hmm.
And we use coaching to explore that. And then we use the shamanic energy work that comes from the mountains of Peru and the Quero. And I've mixed that with some of my ayahuasca training as well to clear out the imprints, the dense energy, the patterns and the stories that really don't serve us anymore. They served us for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but then they stop being useful to the next step of our evolution. And they're either calcified in our system, or we're just very scared to let them go, because what's beyond those stories is unknown. And so again, it's, how do you want to relate to the mystery?
Mm-hmm.
And it's to the mystery of life, to the mystery of you, to the mystery of your becoming. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that many times we don't want to engage. We don't want to engage with the mystery of our becoming. It is scary. And if we can avoid it, it's great. And that's okay. But is that avoidance of the unknown? Is that avoidance of your becoming how you really want to be? And that's where it becomes important to develop a personal compass, so that when we are navigating the terrain of life, we're able to say, ooh, that path ahead looks really scary.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where my compass is pointing. And so do I want to follow this compass that I have developed and cultivated and worked on attuning, not knowing where that path is going to lead?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I want to say, no, I'm going to reject this call to adventure and I'm going to just stay right where I am for now? Both answers are fine. But I can almost promise you, there will be enough tension that builds after you sit in the same space for long enough that life will propel you into an adventure. And so, in my experience, if we can learn to navigate that adventure skillfully and willfully, not willfully as in force, but willfully as a choice,
Yes.
And, my compass that I've developed for myself is that I want to be real. I want to be relaxed. I want to be engaged. I want to be authentic, and I want to be loving. Am I always those things? No. But that's the compass. And so I work consistently on attuning myself to that state. And it informs the actions in the past that I need to take. But it requires me to be feeling and listening and opening to the world and have a sense of wonder and curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes I lend people that compass to start. But it's more important for people to cultivate their own, whatever that is, and to not be provided this external solution of here's what you should do. Because then we're not in the mystery anymore. And that's a really fine line that I enjoy walking, is how can we stay engaged with the mystery and delicately hold the discomfort that comes in the unknown.
Michael, this is such a beautiful description that you just shared. So I want to thank you for what you just did. What I find fascinating about the way you describe the personal compass like this, it is that it is not related to things that we want to do or to have, which is many times, as you said, the idea of the North Star or the ultimate goal or something like that. It often, more often than not, it relates to have or do rather than be. So by setting a compass based on how I want to be, I find it fascinating as a way of taking the decisions, because that when you use that compass in your decision making, it's very different approach, and it probably will lead to some different decisions that might look obvious. The other thing I took from your description that I liked very much was the mystery, how to relate with the mystery, whether you want to engage with the mystery. And this is also, I find it a very beautiful way of, or perspective, not way, perspective, point of view of everything, because that is our experience. So we choose how we want to experience it or engage with it. So what a beautiful reminder. Thank you.
It's funny because you introduced me as an approach coach, which I'm pretty sure that I came up with that description for myself at some point. And I remember sharing it with one of my teachers, and he said, "It sounds like you're a dating coach." And I was like, and then I looked up approach coach, and the top 3 results were dating coaches. And I was like, well, in a way, I am. It's just I'm not trying to help you get the date with, the person of your dreams. Well, in some ways I am, because are you dating yourself? And who is the person you dream of being? But
Mm-hmm.
my wife said it very well recently, which is the mystery is not a what, it is a who. And so as we date the mystery and continue to get to know it, it is a relationship, and it's deeply personal. And just like you don't necessarily want a third party coming into your marriage and telling you what you should be doing in your marriage, you don't necessarily want a third party coming in to your relationship with the mystery and telling you what you should be doing. And at the same time, we live in community. We have egos, and one of the most brilliant things that I heard recently was, no, it's really important to share your egotistical perspectives too, because the community needs to hear them. And then as a whole, we whittle down what's there, what's brought to the table, so that we can find these nuggets. And if it's based on ego, the community will let you know, and they'll reflect that back. But don't deny that you found that thing too. And so, yeah, dating the mystery and having that relationship, for a good relationship to play out, we have to show up. And it's no different with the mystery, the divine spirit, God. Choose your word, but the word's less important. It's this ineffable being that we are all part of, relating with, interacting with, both inside and outside. And nobody knows. So as soon as somebody says, I know the answer, and if I ever tell you I know the answer, please call me out. And I'm sure that sometimes I do. But, nobody knows. And as soon as we say, I know, we've disengaged from the mystery. Because the mystery doesn't have an answer. It has a multitude of answers and an infinite, boundless exploration. So that's my perspective. And I enjoy being able to be a mirror to help kind of bring out and reflect back whatever other people are going through. And that's where the coaching and the energy work comes in together, which is, I'm just really skilled at reflecting. It's my natural skill state, and asking questions, and I know when to poke. But it's a play.
What would you say to someone listening right now and thinking, that's great, Michael, I would love to, engage more with the mystery? What's one action that you would tell them to take? What's something practical that one can take, to take one step towards this direction?
Practice. I mean, it's that simple. If you want to have a date, you have to go out and meet people. Right? So whether that's getting on one of the infinite dating apps that are out there now, or going to some community event, or whatever it is, you're practicing putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
The same holds true for the mystery. And it's much more accessible in sometimes than getting a real life date. I'm not going to tell you that you have to meditate. That might be too restricting for your body, although it might be very helpful. Spend time in nature. As nature, have a conversation with a tree. Try it. It's weird. It's great. How many cultures out there have a relationship with oak? Right? So we can look at the Celtic traditions. We can look at the Greek traditions. We can look at even Polish traditions and North American traditions. Oak is a powerful tree. But it doesn't have to be an oak. Have a conversation with a flower. Have a conversation with anything. And what I want to be really clear about here is that a conversation involves two parts. One part is sharing, and the other part is listening. And unless you listen, you're not going to hear. unless there's like a big thunderstorm that comes in and there's that crack of thunder and lightning that's like forces you to listen. And that's where ayahuasca and some of these plant medicines can be great. It can be that crack of thunder that it is impossible to not listen thereafter. Something, you'll have heard something and you won't forget it. But if you would like a more subtle practice, find something that works. Put your hand over your heart and feel your heartbeat. What is it telling you? I mean, it's so accessible and also so challenging. So, my this is a long answer to your question, but my framework is based off of my own compass. So, can I be relaxed, engaged, authentic, and loving? But the point of that is that when I am real, everything flows. And, talk to however many entrepreneurs and, human optimization experts that you want. People are like, I just want to live in flow. And they'll give you some really nerdy statement that's like, this is what your brain waves are doing. And they're not wrong. For me, flow is what occurs when I feel, when I listen, when I open to the world around me, and when I wonder or when I'm curious. And the way that I encourage people to be real and to live in flow is to practice magic. And so whatever your practice is, this is another acronym, but it should be mindful in the sense that, you're being present and conscientious about what you're doing. It should be adaptable so that it can go with you no matter what state you're encountering, and it can change with you. It should be gentle, and gentle is a very interesting word because if you're used to driving a car at 90 miles per hour, slamming on the brakes is not gentle to your system. So gentle for where you're at now. It should inspire you, and it should help you connect with something more than yourself. And if any practice meets those 5 principles of magic, it will help you find your compass. It will help you live in flow. And then whatever the words are that you want to use that resonate with you in your life make sense, and they will come. But it is an adventure, and it's not without risk. So, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's so soft and easy and gentle. No, it has challenges. So strap in, and also remember to be gentle with yourself as you go through those challenges. Good luck.
Absolutely. Michael, where will you direct people who want to find out more about what you do and connect?
Yeah, people can find out more about me at my website, which is www.alchemyshift.com. And if they're curious about anything about the approach, where they're at in their life, they can set up a free call with me. It's called a purposeful path call, just to understand either how we can work together or what the next step on their journey could be that would be useful.
Thank you. And I have 2 final quick questions that I always ask my guests. And the first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
Personal development to me means cultivating a relationship with myself and tending to the soil of my being so that I can grow.
And hypothetically, if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give him?
Chill out, bud. Yeah, I think this is going to sound so cliche, but every neurotic experience that I had while I was 18 helped me get to the place where I am now. Yeah. With that said, I could still probably have done all those things and been a little bit more relaxed throughout that process. Mm-hmm. And I think I probably would have just said, you're doing fine. Just keep exploring. I love you. I love you. I love you. And then he would have done whatever he would have done with that.
Probably. Yes. Michael, I want to thank you very much for this captivating conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I believe we passed some inspiring message for someone to pick and implement. I want to wish you all the very best with your life and your mission and engaging with the mystery. Any last parting words?
Oh, I've spoken so much. Thank you for having me on, Aggie. I really appreciate it. And for anybody who's listening, I wish, pray, hope, and know that you will have a relationship with the mystery that is you. And I hope that it can be a beautiful one.
And before I end today's episode, if you enjoy this podcast, can you think of one person that would find it useful and share it with them? I'd really appreciate it. It helps the show grow, and you also add value to people you care about. Thank you. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in,